is your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Gunmen attack in Barataria. 2 escape death. TT Chamber says tariff shifts bad for business. Elderly siblings die in house fire. Prime Minister Young rolls out youth housing plans. And internationally, Trump's tariff pause brings market rebound, raises global concerns. Now for the details. 2 men narrowly escaped death in Barataria after gunmen opened fire around 10:15 p.m. on April 8th. A 44-year-old Mover man was ambushed outside his 8th Avenue home, but managed to flee and hide in a drain. A Venezuelan man inside the house was shot in the neck and mouth when he opened the door, but he too escaped by hiding in the same drain. Both were taken to hospital. 1 remains warded. Police recovered spent shells and ammunition at the scene. Investigations are ongoing. President of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Sanji Chase, says the U.S.'s back-and-forth tariff changes are destabilizing for global business. This follows President Trump's 90-day pause on new tariffs, originally set for April 9th. Chase says the uncertainty is affecting markets and trade. The Trade Ministry is awaiting clarity on how the changes will impact Trinidad and Tobago. Tragedy struck in Gasparillo as siblings Suki and Ramdath Beam died in a house fire at Cotton Hill Junction early Thursday morning. The fire engulfed their wooden and concrete home around 4:30 a.m. Both were physically impaired and unable to escape. The cause of the fire is still unknown. Prime Minister Stuart Young made major promises at a rally in Point Fortin, pledging 3,000 new home lots for young first-time buyers, job training and youth development programs. He also committed to the education system and pushing ahead with cross-border gas projects. Despite Young urged citizens to give him a fresh mandate in the upcoming election on April 28th. Internationally, President Trump's temporary 90-day pause on steep tariffs brought a rebound to U.S. stock markets, but concerns remain over rising trade tensions with China. Economists warn of global fallout, potential supply chain chaos, and surging prices in the U.S. The trade war has now begun affecting currency and bond markets, with uncertainty looming over tariffs on key exports like medicines. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Happened yesterday, and of course, even if you had no idea what was going on with primary schools, you would see that the situation on the roads are slightly lessened. And generally speaking, all around SAA time, and probably when the results come out especially, you're going to hear the debate again. And the debate is essentially around the validity, the necessity, the effectiveness of SAA. And then the wider debate would be the effectiveness of this type of testing. And then this type of testing for students so young. And it leads me to essentially what one of my concerns are. Because there was apparently an incident with Tobago and Tobago West MP Champ Cujo, and there weren't any clocks and yada, yada, yada. I don't really care about what happened in that incident, but rather I feel that the emotions that led to that incident, one way or the other, right, regardless of what your take is on the matter, I think it all comes back down to the fact that this situation has kind of grown maybe a little bit out of control. It's gone a little bit too far, because we're essentially saying your future starts now. Your career path, for the rest of your life. It doesn't start in college. It doesn't start in secondary school. It starts with primary school. And we're not talking the typical, well, you get into a good school, so you get in a good education all the way up. We're talking, no. This is a one-time make or break event. If you have a bad day, you might fail for the rest of your life. And the reality is, to some extent at least, the exam is actually, the stakes are not actually that high. Yes, of course, everybody wants to go to a good school and secondary school, etc., etc. But not getting into a prestige school is not a death sentence. To some extent, we kind of treat it that way. Kids already have to deal with the fact that, hey, you're probably not going to see most of your friends again. And even if you see them, generally speaking, the social circle that you have had for basically the only life you've ever known is going to be dispersed. You will never have that group of people around you at one time again. You might have reunions for secondary school, but primary school was that. Now, they already have those emotions, but then on top of that, all the unknown of going to secondary school. Because that's one of the things that hit me when I was like, oh, I'm going from primary to secondary. It's like a whole different world, right? It's outside of my comfort zone. Then there's this exam. And there's so much pressure put on us from this exam. It was common entrance in my time, now it's SEA. And the students are generally 11 to 12, in some cases, some rare cases, 10. And how healthy is this? And I think at some point we need to kind of take a step back. We've reached the point now where there are cool down events for SEA. I just went home. But now I guess the stress on students is so much more that they have to have cool down events. Do we need the SEA? Well, even if we get rid of it, something will replace it, but will it act in the same manner? Not necessarily. But I think regardless of what we have there, we need to really try to figure out a way to not make it bigger than it already is, which I feel is happening. It's a big deal, don't get me wrong, but it's like saying, let's just take Everest and the challenge of Everest and let's just assume it's 10 times harder, or some ridiculousness like that. And then that sets up the expectations for the student and the family. And then when you get certain results, and they're not necessarily a first choice, even at times your second choice, the world might collapse around you. Even if you get your second choice. What's that? They're not even old enough to say they're teenagers yet. And basically the pressure of life is placed upon them, a pressure that they don't even really understand. Switching gears a bit, Minister of Youth Development, Foster Cummings, he is doing the thing that I think somewhat potentially exposes politicians that they are not fully aware of what's going on in the situation. And that is, he's telling the media to stop only putting murders on the front page. Well, first of all, the front page today, at least in one daily newspaper, has nothing to do with murders. There was a murder, or two, or three, I don't count anymore. It wasn't on the front page. And I don't think a murder was on the front page. In fact, what was on the front page this week were things like, oh, the Dragon deal falling through. Anyway, he said, give us a front page and put Barcelona Street Youth Facility where positive things will be happening for the young people of Trinidad and Tobago. Put that on the front page, then the papers will sell. Well, technically speaking, if you want to be a brutally honest businessman, no, the papers won't sell. And that's not because the papers are cynical and they want to put cynical things. That's because that's what the population is looking for, the news. And events at a youth facility is not necessarily as important as political current events that could shape the entire country, or crime, or economy, etc. So he's pointing out, you know, solving crime is more than a government responsibility, it's a social responsibility. It starts in the family, school, the church, the village, the mosque, the etc. That's nice, that's cool, right? And then he has the age-old plea of, and for God's sake, I want you to stop killing each other. That's also nice and cool. There's nothing wrong with all of these sentiments. The problem is, he's kind of late. Other people have already said it before. And that sort of obvious, we have to say this because these are just things you have to say, that's already been played out. So there's actually no public relations value or leadership value or practical management or policing or policy solution implementation value with him reiterating these kinds of low-hanging fruit statements that yes, you have to say, but after you say it once, saying it twice probably does more harm than good for your image at the very least. Because I've already pointed out where young men have reportedly tried to stay away from the gangs, they were killed. And I don't care how much your family tries to help you, your mosque tries to help you, your school tries to help you, your church tries to help you, your community tries to help you, or your village tries to help you. Because unless, and this is one area where I guess the UNC wins the debate on this point, unless everybody's armed, they ain't stopping the gangsters from killing you in the street because you don't want to be part of their gang. So I'm slightly frustrated by a politician who is saying these buzzword statements and he's basically taking the lives of young men for granted. Because it wasn't just one incident. There were a handful of young ones in a restaurant or in an office or whatever. He has a 9-to-5 job. It's not even a good 9-to-5 job. I highly doubt a subway worker by day is also going to be a gangster at night. Why is he going to put up having to deal with being a subway worker? You've ever heard of a gangster that has a day job? A day job, and we're not talking a government job where you don't have to show up. We're talking about an actual, for a private company job where if you don't show up, they'll just, you know, well, you abandon the job, so you're no longer on the books. And he's going to work on a daily basis. These young men are dying because they don't want to be involved. Who is going to save them if not for the criminal justice system? So it's nice, I understand. All of these other things do matter with regards to crime in the long run. But right now we're in the short run. And yes, I appreciate a new youth center. But to be fair to the UNC, it's the same criticism I had when they said they'll have all these corridors and hubs and zones. You could have a youth center. A youth center is a building. Now you need people to put activities in the center, to run the activities consistently, and to know what they're doing when they run the activities. Because they will be undertaking a pretty heavy responsibility, because in some cases, they might potentially be the only mentor that some of those young people might ever know. Because right now, our education system and our village are failing our young people who lack any sort of guidance or mentorship. They're essentially no different from factory workers that clock into school and clock out at the end of the day. So when we get surface level commentary like this from politicians, it makes me wonder, yes, it's buzzwords, it doesn't necessarily mean that his understanding of the situation is limited to that. But given the fact that we are devoid of anything further, anything deeper, then it is not an unfair assumption to make in that how shallow is your understanding really? Because I am fed up reading stories, and even if it's only 5 stories, it is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Completely and utterly ridiculous that we have politicians saying young men don't join gangs, and they can't acknowledge the fact that young men are dying when they don't join gangs because they are murdered. So, how do we solve that? Well, that no longer is a community, family, church, mosque, temple problem. That's all your politicians in power problem. Case in point, another young man, just to highlight today, he was going to the police station to file a report for threats on his life. He ended up dead. I don't know what he had going on. I don't know if he was involved in anything. He's reported to be a painter. He's reported to be a father of 3, turning 30. Something tells me he wasn't the typical gangster. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And now he's dead. He didn't get threats and find a gun and shoot the people who were threatening him. He tried to go to the authorities, and now he's dead. So you see, it's nice that you want to paint this picture where it's not only our responsibility, but the point is when it reaches to the stage where we can't really do anything more for ourselves outside of vigilante justice, which in a sane world nobody actually should be promoting, but indirectly that's the implication of the position that you put people in. When we've reached the point where the community, the family, the social side, it is no longer pertinent in the immediate needs of the moment. We need police officers to do their job. We need a government to do its job. We need a criminal justice system to do its job. I really don't want to hear about, don't join gangs, stop killing each other. I know politicians are not that naive, but the statement is incredibly naive. One thing to highlight, Chaguanas East candidate Vandana Mohit pointed out the fact that there's apparently road paving going on left, right, and center in her area at essentially the 11th hour of the election. And I understand the sentiment. It's one of those things that everybody knows is ridiculous. They're only paving for election. They're only paving for election. They're only paving for election. Here's the trick. Here's the trick. Politicians, because I'm sure if the UNC was in power, they would do the same thing. I don't think anybody could tell me within the last however many times the UNC, yes, we're not debating how many times and if it's the same amount of time and if it's equal to the PNM and who had more time in office. Realistically speaking, when is the last time you knew of any administration that did not pave roads at the 11th hour? Everybody does it. Regardless of if the PNM did it 8 times in office and the UNC only twice, everybody does it. So the point is, they are getting feedback to make decisions to do it this way, or they're not getting feedback to change these decisions. And that is a we problem because we let them get away with it while complaining. We complain about it. Everybody complains about it. Oh gosh, they only pay for elections. They don't pay for the rest of the time. Okay, and then who you vote for? Because the politicians say, well, people forget. When we do things for you early on in the term, you forget that later on in the term, and then you discredit us. And there has to be some truth in that because everybody does it. It is Pavlov's politician, trained behavior. All right. Let's take a quick break here. We'll come back. We'll do a couple stories in the daily review. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point AWS, and we'll be back. Sean Michael Small will be here with you after this.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond
want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I would ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
All right, Daily Review here. I'm talking about the WSN show, Michael Small. One of the observations I want to make, a couple of stories, so it's not just one this morning. Again, new proposals or new promises, essentially how more money will be spent if you vote us in. And I'm starting to get really frustrated by this. First of all, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, political leader of the UNC, is promising currently private key informers the entire outstanding sum of $110 million. Now, to be fair to the budget, that's not a small amount, but it's not a large amount either. So it actually might be doable, right? But the problem is when you kind of add everything up, you still have to ask the question, where is it all coming from? Because Dave Tanku's explanation literally was a non-explanation. So whoever thought of that, I mean, apparently he's the guy that she speaks to about economics, and he literally misused the word diversification in a very basic way. So I don't know, right? I mean, on one hand, we had a Minister of Finance that didn't understand how auditing works, or maybe, dare I say, potentially he willfully or deliberately misunderstood how auditing works. Maybe. I don't know. Can't say for sure. It's just he is a smart man, so it begs the question, how did he get it that wrong? And by that wrong, just look at what happened in the Privy Council. Basically, that's a relatively reasonable way to measure how wrong he got it, right? And now here we have the opposition leader saying, my economics guy is this guy. And then he proceeds to say diversification, and one area of diversification, treating with pre-existing businesses. Not how to expand those businesses in new areas, just general improvements to pre-existing business. That is counter to the definition of diversification. Anyway, so that was one thing. The UNC, but that's been a complaint on UNC. Stuart Young has made a complaint. Dave Tanku was supposedly answering the Prime Minister, and again, didn't necessarily succeed. In fact, I would argue he failed. But it's not just UNC making promises like this. There's another article where Patriotic Front leader Michaela Pandey, she's promising to raise the minimum wage. Right? The best part is the reporting on this. The reporting is it's one of the several initiatives she's promising to lower the cost of living. Now, I don't know if anybody, again, it's almost like if we've reached the point now where economic knowledge is kind of thrown out the window for political speak. I don't understand. If I'm raising the minimum wage, I'm not lowering the cost of living. I'm raising the wages to meet the cost of living. That distinction matters. You want to know why? Because if I'm able to lower the cost of living, chances are that means I have a decent enough handle on inflation. If I have to rely on increasing the minimum wage, as has been seen in certain parts of America, chances are I am adding to inflationary pressure. I am contributing to inflation. See the difference? Because then now, if I increase wages irresponsibly, including the minimum wage might do this, and it causes increased inflationary pressure, then when inflation increases due to that increased pressure, all of a sudden, your increased wages will no longer have the purchasing power to compensate for the increased cost of living, and you'll be right back where you started. But we will just raise prices for little effect. In fact, to some extent, that's the fair with regards to what Trump is doing. He is trying to achieve something to improve America, but at the same time, it's causing a lot of external shocks that could potentially lead to inflationary pressure. And then we have to look at that and say, hey, if their food prices goes up, our food prices might go up too. Our food prices probably will go up. I mean, I don't necessarily know of a scenario where they won't if our main source of food imports, cost of food there goes up, right? It might take a while for all of the nuts and bolts to work itself out and to settle down into an overall balance. So we might see some things spike and other things don't increase in price yet. It'll take some time, but it'll get there. Not to say that we don't have to look at cost of living in a big way. So the reasoning to consider Michaela Panda is not entirely wrong. It's just, I don't necessarily see the level of detail to make me confident that this is an economic plan beyond just throw the campaign promise out there and let the sheeple eat it up. I'm sorry I'm being kind of harsh, but it is what it is right now, right? We have 3 weeks away. I've reached that stage where the frustration's boiling over. Now, one of the things coming out from the failed dragon gas deal, and just move on the topic in a general sense, is literally, right, somebody pointed out that Stuart Young said, quote, "By now you will know that I will continue to pursue this, the dragon. We will continue to fight for the ability and the opportunity to keep our energy sector whole and the future of Trinidad and Tobago and the CARICOM region in the manner that we have become accustomed to." And the writer, I believe, of the article said, in my view, this last point by the TNT's Prime Minister, the writer is Anthony Wilson. This should be in yesterday's Guardian, Business Guardian, I think. Anthony Wilson says, in my view, this last point by the TNT Prime Minister about fighting to keep the country's energy sector whole and looking to ensure the future of TNT's population is in the manner that we have become accustomed to is the most important thing that he said on Tuesday. To maintain the standard of living that we have become accustomed to. We have not really heard anybody talk about that. Because the fact of the matter is, these tariffs, it was bad enough that we have a natural gas shortfall of, I think, over 1 billion cubic feet per day. I could be wrong. Something like 40% production shortfall, potentially. I'm not entirely sure with the numbers, so somebody more learned with me will probably speak on it at a later date and give you more accurate information, like Kevin Ramnarayan or others in the energy sector, right? Not saying that it's an endorsement for the UNC because he's been campaigning for the UNC, but he is an individual who has the knowledge. Now, we have that. So that already is kind of sinking the government's position. But when the UNC now is saying we're going to spend our way out of this without re-incurring debt, because Kamala Prasad-Bissessar has again pointed out, the government took out another loan to pave roads, $250 million. So you can't be criticizing the government. Your plan better not be April 29th, how much loans we could take to try to kickstart the economy because our goal is to spend. Better not be that. And in that case, caller from yesterday, this might be where they are more liberal than conservative. But this tariff situation is basically, it's telegraphing an external shock. The dragon gas deal and its failure was all but telegraphed. It wasn't 100% certain that it would fail. But we saw the looming potential on the horizon. And it was like the sun rising, but it was much bigger and harder to miss. The tariffs, on the other hand, might be an even more certain negative external situation. Something outside of our realm of control. And this is something that I guess to some extent the politicians, either they don't want to admit tough times are ahead, and because then they have to say how they're going to deal with it, and already their economic plans are falling short with the situation before the tariffs. So now when you add this, it's no wonder they don't know what to say, at least from my point of view. They don't have a plan to deal with it. And that's why a lot of what they're going to say is, we'll find a way, we'll innovate our way out of it, we'll diversify, and we never diversify. And then we'll stick to, I mean, at least in the case of Stuart Young, he's kind of doubling down and with a clear plan. Whether we agree with it or not and think it valid is a whole other question. But the NC is not necessarily speaking as though they are facing the reality of the economy is not going. They are acknowledging that the PNM, in their words, mismanaged the situation and mismanaged the economy. But then it's almost like if they are going to be somehow uniquely unaffected or immune to the results. So you can't say that your political opponents has done harm to the economy and then act as though, but the economy will be like flourishing under us as soon as the results are announced. You know, the economy will just magically produce money off the tree that we will pick and then use that to spend and feed the masses, you know. I mean, only Jesus could take 5 loaves and 2 fish and feed the masses, right? I understand that we want to potentially come close to deifying our favorite politicians, but we're all a little bit more, at some point, practical heads will prevail, right? Yeah? Yeah? Meanwhile, let me just go to something that has a little bit more of a positive, slightly positive bearing. The Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturing Association, they have a new president. And the Manufacturing Association, at least the new president, he might actually be looking to be a bit more realistic, not necessarily not using the same buzzwords, but it seems as though they have a few things that they want to focus on, that he wants the association to try and focus on and to achieve. And I think that they are realistic goals. 3 things. And you he didn't necessarily state like an overall clearly defined vision on how these 3 things meet that vision, but you could see where they don't necessarily contradict each other and they ramp up and can work together. The first thing is that, look, he acknowledges the tariff situation, right? And he's saying we will adapt, be innovative and dynamic. Now those are buzzwords. That by itself means nothing, right? Then he goes on, in every disruptive event there will be opportunities. That's basically low-hanging fruit, obvious things to say. That's not detailed to the situation. So again, nothing just yet. And he actually just says, we just need to seek out the low-hanging opportunities carefully. Then he goes on to point out with trade agreements with Canada and the EU, greater opportunities, not just within the CARICOM, but with CARICOM's Dominican Republic and Costa Rica bilateral agreements. So he's basically saying, look, we have to be innovative. Not innovative in the sense that we need to find some set of money to sink into some cockamamie scheme to hope that we could get a dragon deal or the equivalent for the private sector. And he has pointed out, in his opinion, he's speaking about the non-energy manufacturing, including the non-energy derivative manufacturing, right? Which currently is at $6 billion for last year, and he's hoping to get to 10.6 by 2030. All right, that doesn't seem to be totally unrealistic. You might think tariffs might slow us down, but he's basically pointing out, all right, step 1, let's be innovative and adaptive and dynamic, looking for markets with our products, not just sticking to the same markets and trying to struggle through, right? We don't have to change much to do that, depending. So that's it might seem obvious, but the willingness to do it. Then the second strategic goal is to help small and medium enterprises. Now, they account for 85% of local businesses, but less than 10% of the 738 members of the TCMA, right? And he's pointed out to the fact that, look, this is the level of membership that's going to have challenge exporting their goods. So this is kind of similar to Dave Tanku's ease of doing business thing. But Mr. Parsons is not saying he's diversifying doing this. He's rather, okay, we have challenges. What's the second step to try and deal with these tariff challenges and this global trade war? Well, let's see what we could do to kind of make it easier to try to help our smaller members so that as a whole organization, we could still also see some growth there, right? Rather than trying to fight up with mature industries or relatively mature markets and try to squeeze out as much growth as possible, let's also see where we have potential, untapped potential. Something that we're not necessarily, I mean, to be fair, the UNC did imply that with their suggestions, but the difference is the time scale. This can happen within 5 to 10 years, easy. We could maybe start realizing gains in as little as 1 to 2 years. The UNC's proposals are more like after 5 to 10 years, not within. And then the last point is then he was looking to have a Caribbean Trade and Investment Center as his third strategic goal. And you can see where this now is the more long-term goal. This is hopefully we will continue to grow, we will continue to have some resources, and this is the long-term big project, whereas the others are trying to deal with the more immediate concerns and to try to respond to the challenges and attempt to shore up our operations, shore up our memberships, our smaller memberships, and get them to grow. And the unspoken principle is when our smaller members grow, we all kind of grow, and we all could potentially reap some sort of collective benefit, something that we don't necessarily always see in Trinidad and Tobago. I like this. This is somewhat realistic. It's not promising the moon, although to be fair, the promise of increasing exports by 4 billion, that's the promise. But in 10 years, that's not necessarily unrealistic. We have to wait and see how this turns out. I hope that the TTMA can do well because, look, 6 billion exports non-energy derivative products. So I believe it discludes the petrochemical side of it. We literally, everybody that is not a politician that is speaking about diversification is potentially out. There's agriculture, tourism, and this sector. That's basically the three biggest targets of where various stakeholders, commentators, analysts will look to. Agriculture, tourism, yes, but also this sector. We have to produce locally. And to some extent, we need the manufacturing sector, even if we want tourism and agriculture to do well, because the more we could potentially try to set up to manufacture locally, the more inputs in other industries, the better our local industries would be, because right now, too much of our local industry depends on importing the inputs. So we don't realize the full benefits of domestic production that we should be. So here's hoping that the TTMA achieves all the success, because like the Dragon deal, we don't want to see these things fail, but especially TTMA, because I think we are reaching the point where the private sector basically has to look and say, well, first of all the finances, they're on their own agenda, and everybody else needs to try and band together in tourism and agriculture and manufacturing and move forward for the good of the country, because not a lot of people at the top are really showing that they are concerned with the good of the country, or they talk a decent, half-decent game. All right, let's take a break. We'll welcome our guests when we return. There'll be more on talking about the WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Claudette, radiographer at the radiology departments at the community hospital. We offer high-quality service with state-of-the-art equipment in X-ray, ultrasound, CT, and mammogram. Come, our friendly staff awaits you.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
This is Face of Sports WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
So we can talk about.
All right, we're back here and talking about our WESN Connect Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by our disaster management expert, Ashraf Ali, who, of course, Ashraf, something big happened yesterday. I'm not talking about whatever cockamamie political promise that a politician made on a platform last night. We had the SCA. So, dare I ask, what would be your observations with it? Because I did lead off the show basically saying, I actually do think we, as important as it is, we somehow build it up to be even more than it might be. And when you think about it, most students are 11 to 12, in some rare cases, even 10, right? They had one guy in my year that did common entrance at 10, right? And when you look at, when you just think about it, the weight of your entire life is put on you at 11 years old.
And first I want to say congratulations to all those children who wrote SCA yesterday. That's a success by itself, reaching that stage. And parents should be proud for their children to actually be able to write the SCA exam. But I just want to warn, a little warning for parents. Not everyone will get their first choice. And not everyone would be #1. But the fact of the matter, at the end of the day, that is still your level of support after the SCA. And when the results come out, the trauma, the psychological, you will have someone one side very happy, some will be very dejected. You have to make sure that you give your child that support. Because you see, that support is very critical at this age, after going through a traumatic exam like this, where you believe that after this exam, this determines my future. My future, we're talking about whether you go to a prestige school or government school. Is that your future? Your future has not started as yet. you are now in the process.
One of our callers, I could be misremembering, so forgive me. You could call in and correct me if you're listening or if you're watching later. But one of the callers has said he went to a junior sec and then to a senior sec. Like he went, like when, I mean, he's older, right? But when the system in the past, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, you're in a what school? Nah, your future's done. You're cooked, you're baked, you have no hope, right? And to some extent, I don't necessarily think the school system and the education system is at the same level of quality. But on the other hand, it's still not a death sentence.
And it should never be seen as that. It should never be seen as that, because that forges your child throughout, let's say, going into your pre-teenage years and early adult life. If during this period in school years that you feel that there's nothing for me in the future, like we see a number of young children now getting involved in all type of different criminal activities and activities that is unsafe, and you're wondering whether or not they really thinking about their future, unplanned pregnancies, teenage pregnancies, and we have so you have a lot of different things where you have to look at the youth
when
about.
You have no hope for the future, right? The obvious one is, and then young men turn to a life of crime. But young women, all of a sudden, it turns into, well, why am I worried about being pregnant or not? Why am I worried about having drugs or not? Why am I worried about being with the rowdy crowd or not? They might not engage directly with criminal activities, but the kind of crowd they're around is not the safest life or most constructive.
Exactly. And then after you go through the SCA, you go to write CXC, and when you're writing CXC, everybody wants to make sure now 5 CXC subjects is not even good enough, because some of the applications, some of the qualifications, you want 5 CXC and experience. How could you get experience now come out of secondary school? I still trying to figure that out.
That is a phenomenon around the world where basically everyone is like, how can you get experience in an entry-level job? Because an entry-level job is the job that you take to start to get experience. I think this is where everybody loves the bleeding. People need to understand, compassion sometimes could be the most evil thing in the world. Because on the surface, oh my gosh, we should raise some jobs that aren't meant to feed a family of 4.
And exactly. It is not.
Right? Jobs that were done by like university students to help pay their way and to get some pocket money. We're not, if, you know, like these are basic unskilled jobs.
And to add to the complexity of this whole situation and to make it more compounding and more difficult for some, you have young adults and adults, so I'm saying young adults and adults who are in the same category, who are fighting for those jobs where our youths are now coming out of school because they cannot find another job, so they are competing for the same job. So then you have, so we still go, so after SCA, I am wondering whether or not we are still in the same cycle. Cycle is going to, is there going to be any change in the cycle, any movement towards improving the cycle? Because academia is not all. We do have trade, entrepreneurs, right? Small businesses, doing small business, arts and crafts, culture. These are all, we have this whole situation where we talk about the dragon deal and our oil and gas industry, and we have to look at other options where our youths can diversify in terms of getting diversification, in terms of getting jobs in other type of industry. We can't look at the traditional anymore.
One of the areas where GATE might have been an unintended success is in the arts and entertainment field, because what happened was more people are getting formal education that is improving their skills, but then on top of that, it's giving them access to people to be their mentors, who will then say, well, in my career, this is what I did, these are some of the challenges I face, how to navigate them. Because essentially, we have a generation or two of young artists who are having to learn how to monetize their art in a way that their predecessors might not have had to or didn't have the opportunities to do. So it's actually like taking what was really an amateur industry and a very like cast off industry, and it's now kind of forging a new path. Now, to what extent could it grow and be more? We have to wait and see. But like when it comes to general entrepreneurship and things like that, you don't really see a lot of similar stories where this is how people could find mentorship and guidance and get skills in order to take a business idea and advance it to the next level. And a lot of small businesses fail because the people don't understand. Yes, you could have a woodworking business. Yes, you could be a dentist. Yes, you could be a lawyer. Yes, you could be a whatever. And you need to have some kind of technical skill in some kind of field. But you also need to understand the business, and a lot of businesses fail because they don't understand how to manage people, how to manage their accounts. And I guess we've reached a point now where we have Gate. Right? We had a couple generations where all of these things should have been automatic because Gate wasn't really being responsible with how it spent its money, right? But we didn't really target or purposefully educate our population to things that would have been useful. So now we just kind of willy-nilly did it.
Yeah. And so we'll give you an example here. Right now, our vehicle industry, right, is expanding. Everybody wants a car on the road.
Yeah, well, but
everybody wants a car.
So when you say industry,
no. Well, when I mean when I use the word industry, I'm talking about the vehicle industry. When I use it broadly. I use it very broadly, not manufacturing, but very broadly. Because an industry, it is an industry at the same time. But how many of us understand that industry? Because a vehicle cannot function effectively if it has preventive maintenance. That is part of the industry. The supplies of accessories, it's another industry. How many mechanics that we have on the road with all these new brands and new models of vehicles that are coming in here that we have to train persons and because of the experience of the individual learning to how to manage and repair these vehicles. That's another industry. Are we teaching these things in school? We are not going to that. We don't have the volume of persons in the schooling environment or the amount of schools dedicated towards this industry, because we have straightening and painting. We have
well, I mean, so I know one business, they basically, I think they went from repairs and straightening and painting to, no, we just replace. We swap out panels, right? They don't do that whatever anymore. And then I remember over 10 years ago, so, you know, my brother and father, they're car guys. They have their project cars, so they had a mechanic for that kind of stuff who did racing teams back in the day and all of that. The mechanic was getting old. He had his 2 sons, but the point was he couldn't get other staff. And nobody wanted to work. And at the time, I think the whole CPEP, ERP phenomenon and the labor, a lot of small businesses were complaining about the labor market, both in Tobago and Trinidad, and he was in Trinidad, right? And we're not talking about a guy that only knows how to kind of fix the most basic things on a Toyota. We're talking about a guy that, like, yes, he would do the local equivalent of a racing scene, right? And so how much could you potentially learn from him? But people not willing.
And the type of vehicles that we have now, with the amount of technology within the vehicles, you need skilled individuals, young minds.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Young minds who are in tune with this type of technology, because everything is cheap.
Well, it's not just that. Like now, all of a sudden, you need to really understand, you know, potentially digital technology. Electronics are more sophisticated, so it's not just mechanical engineering.
It is no longer.
You know, the chemical side of it too might become more complex with the various fluids. And
so when I use the word vehicle industry, I'm not speaking about the manufacturing. This is a large industry, and like we say with the oil and gas, all the rippling effects coming down on all the other byproducts that was coming. We have other industries coming. So the vehicle industry, all right, is an opportunity, but everything is, when you look at the amount of academia we're talking about, academia cannot be just about strictly
lawyer, doctor,
lawyers, and these type of profession. There are a lot of technical type jobs, right? Hands-on, and that we need to expand on.
I mean, yeah, that's a good point. We might actually need mechanics, might actually need some form of tertiary education just because things are getting more technical. Going back to the SAA situation, and of course, the debate will happen when the results come out. Oh, get rid of the SAA, don't get rid of the SAA, get rid of prestige schools, all of that. But I think to some extent, remember, I said, you know, not getting into a prestige school should not be an automatic death sentence in your mind.
It should not.
You should not sink yourself and say, I have no opportunities. A friend of mine, his daughter did SCA yesterday, and he pointed out the real difference between a prestige school and a non-prestige school really is basically the parents and the alumni and the resources available to those groups. Because he pointed out to one of the schools that his son was going to, and it's like they didn't necessarily have those resources to deal with certain challenges that came up, right? Whereas other more established and the prestige Port of Spain schools and maybe other schools around the country, you know, when you have a fundraiser, the kind of funds you could raise and the kind of network you have is totally different.
Let me throw a spin into that.
Okay.
We have all of this, and please don't get me wrong, I am not blaming or criticizing any prestige schools, right? It's just I'm showing an analogy between both of them and some of the pros and cons.
Right.
Right. As you indicated, the parents, the alumni, and the type of fundings that they can get for the school, but just the population is smaller. The population is relatively smaller compared to the government institutions.
Okay.
When you have persons who are and any prestige school, there's a screening process as to type of individuals in the schools. I'm not saying that it's a right or wrong process, but there's a process that the prestige schools will follow. In the government institutions, we have a vast makeup of students. And we have seen that there are some who need more attention and some have more come from different households. We have different problems taking place, and I am of the opinion at this point in time, for so much years and having to deal with these schools and understanding these challenges we have on a regular basis, is that they need a little more experience in the personnel, in the teachers managing children of this, identifying, and sometimes these type of classes, 30 and 40, for young or inexperienced teacher, sometimes an experienced teacher, is a challenge because the type of attention needed to manage a diverse class like this, that some of them have, we have different type of conflicts taking place, we have much more challenge. So I think resources need to be put more in changing the mindset of the children in the schools.
Well, so that's the thing. I think one of the key points with the parents and the alumni of prestige schools is not just the resources available, but the expectations, particularly on the parent side. Because the parents of senior sec, junior secs, government secondaries, they don't always, in some cases they do, to credit them, and the schools end up, you know, at least when those parents are there and those students are there, you know, all of a sudden, you know, not so much problems, right? But a lot of times, like the parents, oh, my child go into some whatever school that I don't respect, so my child must be stupid, so I don't have high expectations anymore. So then I don't necessarily commit to supporting the school as much as I should.
So I am hoping that those parents whose children wrote essay yesterday try to change the mindset. If we get 50% of those parents changing their mindset and be more interactive in the school, wherever the children was placed after the results come out, take some effort in your child in that age, in molding them as the way you would like them. Not because you send them to a government school, you believe that the teachers are responsible. It's a government school, they're entitled to take care of my child and all that. You have an invested interest in your child and how you would like your child to be a valid contributor to society. You have to pay some attention. It's not just sending them the money to Friday and say, well, the teacher is responsible for them. You're giving up a responsibility, and that is what we keep on saying on a regular basis. While I was coming on this morning I was listening to a radio show host, and he made a very, and I love the point that he was raised for discussion. It had me thinking, and it's something that I've been saying on a regular basis. I want to ask those parents out there, after the SCA results come out, or before the child goes there, have you asked your child, what do they want to be when after they finish? What type of, in the future, where they will see themselves in the future, not what you want them to be. Because many parents go out there and talk about their child and the accomplishments of their child in the presence of other parents whose child is not as accomplished as yours. How you think that parent feeling, and they go back and take that out on a child home? We don't understand what the cycle that we keep doing, you know. Because of I want to keep status quo. The same way I want to keep the same amount, I want to show the type of house that I have and the type of car that I drive, the same way that you want to keep the status quo with your child, because you see your child as
an extension
of that status quo. So my child went to a prestige school, my child went X, Y, and Z, my child get this amount, my child get this amount, and so we keep on competing with the child, but you're not asking the child is not one of the individuals, or you're not asking the child, are you able or you're competent? Have you seen that child is under some serious additional pressures? That then we come back, I know we have a call from San Fernando on, just 2 minutes, a minute, sorry, and then we have the issues where we have, unfortunately, we have children who go over the cliff, and we end up with possible suicide and psychological issues, and then they have
even if they don't,
and then have a serious tangent when they may go into rebellion in the home, violence, and then we end up into the cycle.
Yeah, because they never had control, because they were forced on a path. I'll say this: I had a cousin. He passed for Fatima. He went to Fatima, and then like after a year or two, he was like, nah, this is not for me, because I want other things out of my secondary experiences. Transferred to QRC, parents didn't blink.
Exactly.
Because QRC was not, to be fair, QRC I don't think had the same level of prestige that the current executive leadership of QRC and the PTA and all the work that was done to turn it back into what it is, right? At the time when I was growing up, because I was around the same generation, QRC was a second choice, right? It's not like now, right? So at that time, my cousin was like, no. But QRC still, he identified, it still had things to offer that Fatima didn't at that time, that he valued. And his parents was like, go do you. So we have San Fernando line. Good morning, caller, you on here?
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Ali.
Good morning, sir.
A sigh of relief to have a topic like this morning. You know?
I actually thought that when they said you calling it, I was like, yes, he's probably happy to not have to talk about politics.
Yeah, because you realize
it's still about politics, you know.
Not politics with the program, Sean.
Yes, but technically it's still a political topic, huh? But
everything is politics in a sense.
Yeah.
But this topic is much more in depth.
Yes.
Now, there was something being said here, and there has always been a misconception in the society, by and large, a lot of parents as well, when there has always been and still is this misconception that if my child not doing well in school, then they could go and learn a trade.
Yeah.
And that is one of the biggest lies that they have out there, because to be a good tradesman, you need academic skills. You need to be able to read. You need to be able to understand. You need to be able to understand mathematics. You have to have a certain level of analytical skills. And let me say this to you. I went to a junior secondary school in San Fernando. When I went to that school, I went there and then I went to a senior comprehensive. And they were streaming children, and I ended up doing welding. In our welding class, I don't know now, but at that time, our welding class was so technical. So technical. It was actually equivalent to doing a mechanical engineering technician course in John D. at the time.
Well, yeah, I did mechanical engineering, so I understand the context.
Yes, and when I finished that, I finished secondary school, and I have that senior comprehensive school because it was so much that they crammed down your throat in 2 years. But I did it, and when I finished that, Sean, I knew I was right, you know. When I finished that, because of technical subject, after that I left school and I went back to school and I did physics, chemistry, and maths because I knew I was bright. And that is, people have to understand that if you want to build a technical-based economy in this country, then they have to stop this issue of calling it a trade. And we're trying not bright to go and learn a trade.
Like second best.
Second best. It is not about being. This is not second best. This is how Germany has built the economy. You know.
Yes, yes.
Up to today, you have to understand that you need that level of if you go into school to do auto mechanics, and you need to stop calling it trade and change the name. I wish.
I think they call it vocational at this point in time.
Right. I wish they could actually have, but a lot of the vocational things, Sally, is that after you finish school, it's like, well, you didn't do well in academics, so you go there. And that is a misconception because you have to do well in academics. You have to do well to be able to be a good tradesman. And they are not pushing this. Mediocrity is being pushed, and quite rightly, as you all said, you need to have in schools because they have secondary schools and what do you call them? Not prestige schools as the term, but that do very well. One of my kids went to one of those schools in South here, and it starts with a good leader.
Yes.
And that school had a good leader, the principal.
Yeah.
That man was a good leader.
Let me just cut right there. QRC and Fatima recently, I think, is two good examples, good principals, and look at what they made of the schools.
No.
Yeah. My other children went to prestige schools, right? And 4 of them. That one didn't go to a prestige school, and that one ended up in university just like the rest of them. Just like the rest of them from that school.
I went to
because you had a teacher, you had a principal, and then, as you said, you have alumni, you have parents that, because with the prestige schools, let me say this about prestige schools. When a child passes past prestige school, the parent actually gets more involved because it's like a
status.
It's like a status symbol. So they force themselves to get involved. And a lot of them don't do the same thing when the child goes to a government school or a secondary school. And that is where the problem, that is part of the problem. And this is the only problem, but that is part of the problem.
Yeah,
because you have to get involved. Don't care wherever your child goes to a school in Timbuktu, you have to get involved. So nice topic, gentlemen. Nice seeing you, Mr. Ali. And you have on, I like the colors that you're wearing today. It's red, yellow, blue, nothing like that.
It's bluish. It's blue adjacent. Thank you, Mr. San Fernando. Yeah.
So, like the caller was indicating, I went to Turpula Secondary School. My children went to El Dorado Brown, what they call El Dorado Secondary, the Brown uniform. And that principal across there, I'm not going to call the name.
Right.
She do mixed matters.
Okay.
She call out parents. When I say call out, she call out parents, she call out children. And when she call you in for an issue, you better come in for the issue because she does not mix matters. Because she see the school as a reflection of, the students as a reflection of the school and how the school is going, how she wanted to change the mindset of individuals in the school.
Yes.
That I would say give her kudos to.
Yes.
Right? And that is my experience with the school. My principal in school didn't mix matters either.
I hate to say this, but I have the reverse. But
right?
Anyway.
So you will not get everyone on the same page, but at the same time, the more you start to push and try to change the the perception, the public perception that the school itself, the physical infrastructure itself, and the teachers in the school are the issues, and that is the only issue, then you're lost already. You have to you have to take some interest in your child. You have to take that interest, because when your child reach 18 or 17 when they come out of school, it's only for a period of time. Let's say after 18, the child come out of school after 18 and the child cannot get a job, is struggling outside there. What are you going to do? And how are you going to tell the child, well, and see me, I hate when, I personally hate when parents say, well, I didn't have some more subjects, so I didn't know what you're complaining about.
Yeah, back in my day.
Back in my day, I didn't have that problem. You're not facing those problems in this day and age.
So to some extent, there's this ongoing debate. Is the latest generation lazy? But then people would point to, well, every generation, they said that about it, right? And then now, to what extent do they feel entitled, or has the economy just changed? Because somebody pointed out the kind of economic spending power young people have in America today doesn't equate to what they had in the 50s. The ability to buy a house
exactly
is not the same. It is a lot harder. And a similar phenomenon exists not just in America, in the UK, in Trinidad and Tobago, etc., etc. And I think this is one of the things where partially you can say it's the government's fault why the economy is the way it is, but it's also the world and just how things progress, right? And are you going to just sit down and say, well, it's the government's fault, it's the government's fault, right?
No,
you still have to try to do the best you can for your child, right?
But it's a future. You want to plan for or plan for your future, but at the same time, encourage or assist your child in living for living in the future, because today and tomorrow is not ours, you know.
I think also the way how we set up this whole tract of primary to secondary to tertiary is that you can't fail, right? And if you fail, it's all over.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas, to some extent, history has shown, look, people need to learn how to deal with failure. Young people that never fail, when they fail later in life, it is catastrophic, right?
They could crash.
And I know that there was one athlete. Sorry, we have a call? Yeah.
Yeah, athlete.
Yeah, one athlete. Hold on, I'll come, Master Control, I'll come to you in a second. He famously said, look, they had to cut me to help me because he was so far gone, right, at that point. Because with regards to professional athletes in America, they never fail.
Yeah.
Until they get to the professional ranks, and all of a sudden, you are not the biggest, strongest, fastest anymore, right? And then your attitude and your mindset and your mentality, a lot of athletes crash and burn. It's not just about your athletic ability, it's about your mental. And then now for trades, it's similar in that trades is not just about cutting your wood. You have to be a sole proprietor. We don't have factory shops where you do woodworking, where a business owner could hire carpenters to get experience or to get a steady flow of income because you're doing some amount mass production, some amount customization, right?
Yeah.
So we have a comment, I think, from WhatsApp. We have a caller from WhatsApp. I'm sorry, I completely misheard that. I don't know if we still have the caller. Good morning, caller. You on here?
Morning, SPS.
Morning, sir.
It's really nice to be on with you this morning, this Friday morning. But Sean, two comments I want to make. Eh? And let me say good morning to my friend in San Fernando. I'm getting a feedback on my phone though, but are you all hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you clear, so don't worry.
All right, trying to gather with the new protocols and calling and this kind of thing has been really tough. But Sean, I heard you speaking about the minister talking about that new structure that was made in East Palestine. Sean, I don't think that you or even the public know the importance of it. And I heard people even speaking bad about the library in La Hospital. These two institutions, these two buildings, are what I will say would be the future of many young people's lives. A library, most of all, where research can be done. I mean, you had a lot of things. And even in East Port, in that building. But I told you all before, as a director at MIC, and I want to support what San Fernando is saying. Do you know MIC courses are still assessed by the Germans?
Yeah.
Every year the Germans come in and assess our exams that are done at MIC. You know, so the German model is still strongly followed by MIC. And I'm telling you, as the director responsible for outreach, within the past 3 years, you see that thing you're saying there about learning a trade and a second option, that is something of the past. All our intakes are oversubscribed by the 1,000. Persons are gravitating to technical, I wouldn't say subjects, I don't want to say trade, but technical profession more than before. You mentioned wood building, or what you call, we used to call joinery long time.
Right.
We have a program joined with the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Commerce that is called Wood Up. And we did 2 cohorts thus far. And the youngsters and them were taught how to create high-end wood products. I must say that I might have been ignorant before going to MIC, but if you do a little more research on MIC, you'd realize that what a marvelous job they're actually doing there.
No.
I mean, they are on all social media. We work hand in hand with CCC. We work hand in hand with the East Port of Spain Development Company. We are in CLOT. We are in BCOM. Sean, MIC has 12 centers throughout Trinidad and Tobago and growing. I guess the only thing that prevents us from continuing that growth might be resources, cash, but there's a great demand for technical expertise out there. Up to recently, BPTT did a project, a joint project with us, whereby we were training BPTT workers, youngsters from MIC. We have an engineer in training program. When you graduate with the engineering degree, you come to MIC and you learn the worker world as an engineer. Sean, we have one of the best, what you call engineering, where they create parts for machines and all of that.
Yeah. But Kola, let me maybe devil's advocate for you one time. With all that,
well, you could ask any question.
No. I'm familiar with I'm familiar with MIC, right? I too did my mechanical engineering at John D, so I'm familiar with MIC and the other aspects of MIC. But the sad thing about it is that the vast number of individuals or the population of Trinidad and Tobago view MIC as a trade school, not understanding the technical experience and expertise in MIC and the type of targeted the audience or the youths that goes through MIC and what they come out, how they come out. And I believe that we need to expand it in the context that it is not being viewed as a trade school, but it's a technical, and you don't have to be you don't have to be a doctor or lawyer when they come out of thing. There are other avenues, and I believe even from a primary school environment, right, you should be able to channel, because when you used to be able to know who could go, who has that desire to go into that, because people feel these trade schools is not sorry, and I'm using the word again. These schools.
Let me just stop in and track it. Long ago, we leaving high school and without any subject, so you're leaving primary. Sorry, you go ahead. I'll comment when you finish.
No.
Sorry.
Go ahead. You go right ahead.
No, what I'm saying is that we call it trade school.
Yes.
You know what they call it today? Tech VOC.
Right.
So the technical aspect of it, just by its name, technical vocational.
But caller, I think
that thing about trade school.
Caller, the point is, to what extent is the population and society still overly emphasizing academics, white-collar work, doctor, lawyer, accountant, office clerk, business manager? That's what you need to be successful. And then the next stage, probably in society, is government work. And then maybe technical vocations comes third. We're not talking about the people who actually go and who accomplish and succeed in these training courses, but rather how society on a whole still views them. Because
it should never be choice 1, choice 2, or choice 3.
Do you know that we are certified with the American Welding Society?
Caller, I understand that. Caller, I understand that. What we're saying has nothing to do with what is. What we're saying is the population, to some extent, and maybe it's changing, but to some extent still has a perception of what is important for education, and technical vocation is still not the it's not anyone's priority when their child does SEA that they actually want to go there proactively, right? Maybe the child eventually, when they find out about it, they want to do it proactively. But parents are not thinking...
I would leave him now, but I challenge you. I will invite you to a career fair, and you will see the difference.
No, caller, it's not about the institution. The institution and
no,
the people...
I'm not talking about the institution. What I'm speaking about is that when you have a career fair in these schools, you will see the response of the students. That's what I'm saying.
Right, but caller, what I am saying is, that's the response of the people who go. I am speaking to the response of the people who don't go. And I'm saying that this is a career path that potentially should be 12 institutions is not enough of where it should be if it was in a better place, because the needs of society is not, we don't need a handful of plumbers and technicians and carpenters or whatever, right?
Yes.
There's room for a lot more.
A lot more, and the environment, there's a lot of technical things that has to be going. So I agree with them.
The institution is succeeding, and we're not saying that the institution is succeeding. We have Shagonas on the line and telling me we don't have a messy caller. Good morning, caller, you're on the air.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Well, I've been listening to this new election we have coming up, and I am convinced that we are doomed, because the present government never follow the rules of government, as I have explained to you. It's to enforce the laws and how to improve the laws. And the new one is worse. They talk about starting at 10% salary. Now, there's nothing wrong with that if you got the country good.
Yeah.
The trouble we are not. The last government was not collecting the revenue. You see it all about with housing, tax, and whatever it is. And they're borrowing more money. Right? And the government, this new government, and the UNC talking about putting up proper salary, but they're not talking about dealing with the problems with the tax system. Because we have a very progressive tax system and we destroyed it. And that's what we have to go back to. They're talking about getting rid of local government tax, property tax. And they don't realize that property tax is one of the best taxes they have. Because it is not really a tax, it's really a pricing mechanism for certain goods and services. And it used to be for water rates, sewer rates, and local government rates. And the thing about these things is if you enforce them, they keep property prices in line with income. Any questions for the gentleman?
Just one.
Who is that?
And just a observation, or I should say a comment. I agree that taxes are important. So unfortunately, if I do have to pay tax, I would have been in a better place. But I not now. I'll still pay my tax. But the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of the population, the comments on the challenges that they are saying is that when you pay, you expect an expectation to see some level of progress.
Yeah. I don't think y'all are disagreeing here.
Right, and that is why I think over the years we have not seen where the monies has been invested in increasing the livelihood or the living and the infrastructure that we have.
Because of what I said.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have the various ministries putting up their annual administrative report saying what they did and making the recommendation. And these are the basic things. If you don't do that, and none of the new parties coming up, none of them talking about that.
No.
Everybody talking about following the gimme culture. Government is not about giving.
No, it is not. It is not.
Government is about having security and proper services in that country. And you must have proper taxation and progressive system of taxation is the best. We went and destroyed that and come up with a revenue authority, which has no greater power than the Board of Inland Revenue. The problem is the Board of Inland Revenue was not doing their work, and the people who supervise oversight were not doing their work either. Okay, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Accountability, as they always say.
Listen, first of all, within the last year, we have basically seen politicians that don't understand the word audit. And within the last week, I have seen a politician that doesn't understand the word diversification. And another politician that apparently does not understand the difference between raising salaries and reducing cost of living.
So I think we should send them to a tech folk school because they need to understand more technical aspects of it.
No, in this case, they need to go to an economic school, right? Oh, sorry, they should probably, it might be enough for them to go and do a Form 6 economic course. I don't even know if they need to do a university economic course because we're talking definitions, or maybe an English course, you know?
Ouch.
Learn how to look up words in a dictionary. But the professor is right because, and you see, to use an extreme example, Trump said, yes, I use exemptions, the same exemptions the Democrats put in for their finances and they enjoy. We don't have it quite as elegant. We have all kind of patchwork nonsense where who had to get a favor to get this done here, look, they want to remove the demerit, they want to adjust the demerit point system to say you're going to have to do a refresher course. So I would like to know, are the licensing officers basically going to now have a second bite at the apple in order to say, so you're giving me in order to get through with your refresher course, right? Because still to this day, you will fail multiple times if you don't give them something.
Obviously.
And this has not been addressed. Just FYI, when the Prime Minister says, well, the leadership for the police is lacking and we need to address that as soon as possible. You're there now, right? But things like, but it's not just the politicians. Things like the Revenue Authority, the unions are fighting it tooth and nail. Now, in theory, most of them are going to just transfer over to the Revenue Authority. Some of them might actually have to work now because their job description might be a little bit different, right? Oh, sorry, but the point is the Revenue Authority is there because it has been acknowledged tax revenue has not been collected, and that whole process is failing. But listen, if we want to debate if the Revenue Authority could do the job or not, that's different. But the debate is, oh my gosh, we're going to lose our jobs. No, you're being offered other jobs elsewhere. Why is that so hard if we want to see things improve? Now, I don't know if we need to change, but I'm just saying the debate is not done in a very academically good faith manner. We have San Fernando, I think, back on the line. Good morning, caller, on here.
Good morning again, Sean and Mr. Ali.
Morning.
Good morning, Davide. I know you're busy these days. I know this is your season. So, and that's why I'm hearing you. But I'm glad to hear you. Sean, I listened to Davide, and I want to give some constructive criticism to Davide this morning, as you always say. When, as you know, Mr. Ali, long ago, when you spoke about John Donaldson Technical Institute and San Fernando Technical Institute, those were, it was equivalent to a university. You looked up at those schools with that kind of pride, and that is where, even though all the good work that everybody spoke about with those institutions, MIC and NEST and stuff, we need to firstly they need to change the narrative of those of the messaging to get it out to the public, and that is one of the issues that I think that they are not doing. Change the messaging of the schools, because you have to advertise like everything else, you know. You have to advertise. If you have
to be fair,
you could have the best product in the world and you're advertising is crap.
To be fair to Davide, the institutions are doing well. They have enough people, they're oversubscribed. The problem is the society with regards to education, and that aspect of education is not doing well.
In a large way, Sean, they are still looked down upon a second best.
Okay.
The messaging needs to change to let the population and let the wider population know, and the younger people. Just like how I used to talk up to, I want to go to John D. Back in those days, it's the same thing that they should, children when they go into school should want to say, I want to go MIC, you understand? And let me say this, that a lot of people don't know. Right now there is a economic boom in Guyana, right? And an economic boom going on in Guyana. And a large part of the professional labor force in Guyana is from Trinidad and Tobago. You would be surprised to know how many Trinidadian and Tobagonian professionals in all spheres and in the technical domain are in Guyana. That is the engine of the Guyana labor force right now, the main engine of the Guyana labor force. So we are doing a good job, but we need to do better.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend,
Thank you, caller.
I understand.
Be real crazy. If Guyana is like, well, we need to educate our own people, so we'll send them to technical schools in Trinidad.
But you know,
if they might start to like identify this is necessary and we can't.
We see because of the, as the caller mentioned, because of the impact of the development in Guyana at this point in time with the oil and gas and the industries that is required to sustain the oil and gas industry, all the fallouts. You need training, you need technical skills, and eventually their education system will have to catch up with that because of
Here's the thing though, they could run into the same situation of Dutch disease that we ran into, right? And I think we need to really understand that what happened to the labor force, to the labor market with this eat a food mentality, because part of the reason why I think vocational jobs are looked down upon is, what is tier one? Well, you want to be doctor, lawyer, because that's big money and status. What is tier two? Government work, because that is money without working.
Sustainability.
Right? Then tier three, vocational schools. You actually have to work for your paycheck and do an honest day's hard work, But that will be looked down upon because the guy with the government job that don't have to do nothing, well, he coming across as having more status than you because he don't have to work. I mean, it comes back down to the mentality, whether you want to call it the plantation or in India or in China or in Japan, right? People in the fields that have to do hard work and they have tan skin because they're in the sun are looked down upon, and people that sit in the office and do nothing whole day and they pale because they don't see no sun, they have higher status for whatever reason, right? It's not exactly the same thing, but to some extent, you in the office sitting down whole day, you collecting a check, I'm self-important.
Yeah.
I have all the time in the world to make it seem as though I am, right? But the carpenter now that actually putting in a hard day's work and actually building something, not seen as important. Do you know in Finland with their education system, and it's something we brought up in the education debate, it might be a model to base on to then try to do a pilot program if we want to change our education system. Maybe not all the aspects, maybe all, right? Teachers in Finland, the standards to get in, like 10% make it. They're seen at the same level as doctors and lawyers, right? That's to tell you the power of expectations on a profession, right? Now, to some extent, I think they're paid well, but I don't necessarily know if they're paid as well as a doctor. Right? But the expectations of how the profession is viewed, and they have to have masters, right? We ain't talking no, you get a little bachelors and a little farting around and you're a teacher. Because in Finland, and this is one of the biggest differences with teachers, you are the teacher for the students for like 7 years.
Yeah.
They don't move on to other teachers.
Consistency.
Right? I know my people, and the syllabus is not as vast. The teaching time per day is not as long. It's about effectiveness, because I think back in the day, our teachers all knew they have times when, even though it's teaching time, we really just need to let them have a break, right, informally. But now as the demands got worse and worse, I wonder if they are able to do so, primary and secondary level.
So true.
Right? So that eat a food mentality with our job market, it really messed us up for small business, for education, right, for expectations, right? Yes, people in high-end homes that want to be lawyers and doctors or whatever, that wasn't affected. But there was the other aspects of society that was affected. And now we haven't grown a private sector that can afford upward mobility so that, yes, people will live that dream of, well, I started from the bottom and work from the top. Because every entity is essentially flat. So there isn't a lot of places to go, right? And it's very hard for people to be motivated to excel in a customer service job if all they could do is bounce from one entity to another, because they only have so many senior positions and, 3 supervisors and a manager. How much turnover are you going to have there? So, and the thing is, this is where maybe the CARICOM single market economy might shake things up, because it might inject a little bit dose of reality into our labor market, and allow people to seek opportunities elsewhere, right? And then the demand for the education system might increase to improve, right? So then you get trickle-down side effects locally.
You will see it from a different perspective. You'll see it from a different perspective with the other Caribbean countries and how they deal with certain aspects of customer service, right? Because we talk customer service in Trinidad and Tobago, and we do really. We
have in isolated pockets.
Isolated pockets.
Certain hotels, certain restaurants, certain retail outlets, they have a lot of people that really do a good job. Even fast food outlets. There's one fast food place, I won't say which one it is, but I have told the people there, it's like, you all impress me.
And I've experienced a lot of good customer service in Trinidad and Tobago. But holistically,
it's not a thing.
It's not so.
It's not ingrained in society.
Exactly. So when you see good customer service, when you get good customer service, I think it's important that you tell the individuals, so appreciate that you appreciate a good customer service, and also being a good customer. Not always a good customer service, but be a good customer too.
You see that? That even if the service rep is bad, you still be a good customer. Don't add to the problem, because it takes 2 to tango. You don't know how many bad customers that service rep had to deal with. I know, because I did that job. Last thing, we have to close. Thanks to the callers, thanks Ashraf, but to Mr. Dabadi, I did say about the youth center, right? I didn't really criticize the center because I said the programs there, the center alone is just a building. Now you need the programs. And the importance of the programs and the people running those programs is that those might be the only mentors those young people will ever know. Because they might not get mentorship from their teachers, and they might not get guidance or mentorship from their parents or older siblings or uncles or aunts. That might be it. So I actually did acknowledge the unique importance because we no longer have the village. And so this is a way to try to inject some of that back into society. But my problem was Foster Cummins basically did the same old, please stop killing each other. You all men need to stay away from crime, that kind of sentiments. And I'm like, time out. Just yesterday, somebody died who was trying to make police reports because there were threats on his life. A father of 3 kids, 8 years old. Yeah, how many people die because they don't want to be involved in crime?
They don't want to be involved in it. And the other side of this, and Dabadi, I appreciate MIC, but when you look
I'm happy to hear that they're doing so well.
They are doing so well. But society looks at the persons or the percentage of individuals who are going into these type of programs as the delinquents of society.
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
Maybe still, yeah. Although it might be changing.
It might be changing.
The market might be correcting itself.
Good.
Maybe,
so,
right?
so we have to look at it from this perspective, is that we have to, this new generation of children who just wrote SCA has to have an opportunity to say, listen, I have equal options that can benefit me in the future. So if I choose that while going through school, listen, parents decide I want to send my child to a technical vocational school and go to MIC to be a craftsman, or engineer coming out of MIC, right? Or mechanical engineer or doing welding, because when you do welding, and that's using basic welding course, you have opportunity to do additional type of welding. Welding is a very technical trade.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm using the word trade because, a technical field or technical profession.
Yes.
Right? We have different type of welding, underwater welding, and that is just one aspect of it. And when you have to do underwater welding, you have to learn to go scuba diving, you have to do, so there's opportunities for children not only to believe that if I go to these type of institutions, or my parents say, you're delinquent in school, so I will send it to do a trade. In their mindset, well, that is all I can settle for, but it's an opportunity to expand yourself and be better than in other areas also.
Let me close with this. Being delinquent doesn't mean you automatically are the type of person who does bad in an office setting or with paperwork and who will do good with other types of work. It just means you're a delinquent. There could be many reasons for that.
Exactly.
Many reasons for that. With that said, I think that's what we need to understand. TNT can only have so many lawyers. And not every student is going to want to do academic paperwork. Yes, you might still do academics, but you don't necessarily want to be in an office for the rest of your life. It just all depends. We don't all figure it out in a moment. We need to be more flexible in our thinking to allow the young people to have the ability, the options to choose something else and to understand that it's not wrong, because society actually does need these technical people.
And if you believe that the way the society is not structured for your child for the future, you have an opportunity now to change it by telling your child or giving your child that opportunity to choose particular jobs that can improve society. So, you all don't like police officers in the way that police officers believe and how police officers operate. I would encourage you to give your child an opportunity to become a police officer and change the mindset in society.
I'll say this, the leadership needs to change before I go trust anybody child linked to me, whether it's my child, my family's child, my neighbor's child, my friend's child. Too many. It might only be one, but that is one too many. Eater food people is in the police service to believe that. With that said, have a good weekend, folks. Try your best to make it. So put in the effort. And in part, it's nice to be nice to everybody you meet this weekend. Don't sweat the small stuff. Life too short for that. Stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5471.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.